I'm Willie Adam from the Design and Technology Association, and I'm here with D&T teacher Louise Cranston and with Kate Henderson, who's the literacy coordinator here at St Bernard's Catholic High School. And we're in discussion today talking about how speaking and listening skills can be improved by the two departments working together. The Paul Hamlyn Foundation sponsored project aims to improve students' speaking and listening skills through delivery of a design and technology project in which students work with a client to identify a problem and provide a solution for some element in the community. Louise, can you describe how you work with your Year 9 students in delivering the project?
Since coming onto the day yourselves, we managed to get a client who's Gary Drabble, who works for Sheffield and Modern Schools, and he's come in and set us a brief which was to do with the Tour de France coming to Yorkshire this year. And we've worked with a group of 10 students in two groups who've produced and also designed an oral speaking and listening project around a commemorative project for the Tour de France. Initially they interviewed Gary Drabble, he was our client, who came in, answered all the questions, and they were a little bit sort of nervous at the start. And then got a little bit more into it at the end, and you can see that in some of the videos that we did of them. We did some practice speaking and listening. At the very end, they then presented their ideas back to Gary Drabble, which was all very kind of... they were very secretive between the two groups. They didn't want each other to come out with the same answers, so they were very closed about what was going on.
Okay, successful project then, really.
Yeah, they were really good.
Kate, in your experience, what marks out a student as being particularly successful in their speaking and listening, and what other factors can you identify for those who are sort of finding it more difficult?
I think a lot of students have a fear of speaking and listening, a fear of presenting in front of an audience. I think what marks out a student that's particularly good is somebody who is confident, who has that fluency that you need. And then it's all the other aspects, the eye contact, facial expressions, gesture, intonation, that makes their presentation natural. And the students who are the best are the ones who are the most natural, really, and the most confident. They certainly need some warming up with it, definitely. They need practice, it needs to be embedded in the curriculum so that it becomes something that is then less frightening for them and just a part of what's normal.
How important do you think a realistic audience or client is in developing speaking and listening skills as well as delivering the project?
I don't know about you, but I think it's actually really important because it gives the students a real focus. Any kind of work that you can do in a school that has real audience and real purpose, I think, for the students has much more meaning to it. So I think for our students, it certainly gave them that little bit more ambition, I think that little bit more aspiration. They knew they had to present to somebody out there in the real world and to sell their products. So I think it made a huge difference in that respect.
They didn't know who he was at the start, and then they kind of engaged with it all because they knew that they had to make something that was appealing to the client to be sent on maybe as a customer and everything in the process later on. They were really engaged, they loved it, and it was something so different. It's not something that we've done before down here in DT, and they saw the real purpose for making their product, designing their product, and passing the information backwards and forwards between themselves and the client, telling them, this is what you need to consider in regards to who's going to buy this product, who's going to come along, and they really, really enjoyed it, I think.
Another element in the project is group work, and many design and technology teachers may not be familiar with the factors that produce good group work with students working together. Kate, how do you prepare students for working together in groups and developing good speaking and listening skills?
Well, the key thing is in that preparation, and I think for us in the English department, again, it's embedded within the curriculum, so we do it often, but we do make sure it's prepared, so it isn't just discuss this and get on with it. It is very much a thought process that goes into it. So, for example, when we put students in groups, they have to establish the rules for themselves within the discussion, and then we establish class rules. What is it that makes a good discussion, making sure that that's very clear. What isn't a good discussion, so that they understand the success criteria, if you like. We model it, definitely. We show them examples of really effective group discussions. We show them examples of ineffective group discussions. We get them to look at mark schemes and mark them accordingly. We also get them to have different roles, and we specify roles sometimes within groups. So we might have someone that's a chair, someone who has to move the discussion forward. So sometimes assigning roles to particular people can give them that bit of a comfort as well, I think. They know exactly what they have to do in that group.
Yes, yeah.
Sometimes we don't do that, but I think to start off with, it's important to have that and to establish roles and rules, definitely.
Now, how effective was this for you?
We do a fair bit of group work actually in DT, and the kids are actually kind of used to that. But having done some of the speaking and listening things and doing like starters at the start of every lesson, they did become much more independent as well in their work in terms of group work, rather than me having to step in as much as I maybe usually would. They kind of ran themselves. It was really good to see.
Did you think the support from the English department was helpful in that?
Kate's been really, really helpful, especially with things like the marking and things like that I struggled with. We're used to DT levels, we're not used to marking kids and speaking and listening and things like that, and she's been really, really helpful. She came in a couple of lessons and then did sessions with me and looking at the kids' work, the videos that we took of them and assessing their work and things like that as well.
Yes, good. In delivering the project, students need to meet with a client to identify their needs and do a presentation to them. What advice would you give to D&T teachers to help them deliver this aspect of the...
Again, it is in all of that preparation that's important. So I think doing a kind of mock presentation is really important. Getting them, they could present to somebody else in school. The head teacher's always a good one because they always rise to that challenge. I quite like that. Or another member of staff, someone who perhaps isn't their DT teacher, so they're a little bit more unfamiliar with them, but someone who would be able to still offer them some kind of constructive criticism at that point, because that's really important for them then developing and making that progress for when they present to the client. So I think the practice is really important, and the more they can do of that, then the better. And
that showed itself when you were delivering the project, is it? That sort of...
We did quite a lot. We didn't present to anybody else as such. We presented to each other quite a lot. One of the things that I did get to on one of the starters for one of the lessons was that they had, at the end of one lesson, they planned out a rap. And then they presented that at the start of the lesson to the other group about what they were doing in their group and their products, which worked quite well. And it also got them kind of, instead of just being quite stiff and standing there, they actually used a bit of expression, like with their hands and movement as well, which was quite good.
A key part of the project was delivering a presentation to the client. How would you go about preparing students for doing a presentation to a client?
Again, I would say, it's in that practice and presenting as often as you can and to as many different audiences as possible. Like Louise said about presenting to each other, that's a great way of doing it. It's less scary for them, if you like, to do that to each other. But because there's an element of competition there, because there was in this case with this task, I think that raises the game somewhat as well. But the more practice they can get, the better. It's all in the practice, really. But also, at the same time, you don't want them to be over-rehearsed, because you still want that element of it being quite natural. So it's that balance. Yeah.
Did you find that the students dealt effectively with questions and unexpected elements?
They got much better as time went on. Thinking back, like at the start, they were quite nervous about standing up at the front. Some of them didn't want to stand up at the front of the room and talk to everybody else. But because we kept, like, every lesson we embedded a little bit of something more and a little bit different, they didn't necessarily always realise that they were doing some sort of speaking and listening to prepare them kind of for the very end when they were presented to the client. We did, I think, a couple of lessons before we came in. We sort of had a couple of dry runs through, and also trying to get them not to put all the information on the PowerPoint so they don't just read off it as well. Because a lot of them are trying to do that, which then means that they just end up looking at the PowerPoint instead of looking at the client and explaining what they've done. But they did definitely improve from the start to the end. Yeah, loads of little bits of practice all the way through.
I wanted to ask a little bit about assessment and the approaches that you employ to assess students. What sort of things do you do to establish a base level and then subsequently to assess their progress?
Well, we do make sure that it's embedded all the way through the curriculum from day one, so it becomes very normal within English to do speaking and listening. We call it speaking and listening. We make sure we look at what's a good speaker and what's a good listener, so that they understand that listening is just as important a component of it as the speaking. And then we will assess them at various points in the year within the curriculum map on a kind of formal speaking and listening assessment task, and that could vary from something that's drama, role play, to something that's an individual presentation on something personal to them, to a group discussion. So we're building lots and lots of different things, lots of different tasks and activities for speaking and listening, so that nothing then hopefully would throw them too much. And obviously we use the national curriculum levels to assess them, to find the baseline so that we know where they need to go to make progress. And that goes all the way through until obviously they hit GCSE, all the way through from year 7. Like I said before, we do lots of modelling of what is effective speaking and listening. We use past pupils to do that, or pupils in other year groups to come and do their successful speaking and listening presentations, as well as using recordings. So we've got lots of resources like that, so that pupils are really clear what they need to do to be successful. And then when it gets to GCSE, obviously we use the exam board criteria.
Yes. And was this an area you felt comfortable with, or did you have to go to the English department for advice?
That is probably the bit I found the most difficult, actually, assessing them on their speaking and listening, because I'm quite happy I can assess them on their design skills, and on their making skills, and on their sort of creativity and all that kind of stuff, because it all comes through what we do in DT. But I really found that the most difficult, because through the Paul Hamlin Foundation and the training day that we had, you gave us the videos to watch, which was fine. But until you actually see your kid stood at the front, and then all of that kind of went out the window, and I was panicking. But Kate was brilliant. I gave her a quick phone call to her office and said, I'm really struggling with the levels. And we sat, and because we videoed everything, we sat and looked through the videos, and Kate would point out, I think this bit's really good here, and look how this person's done this bit. And we pulled it all together, and she was really, really good at helping me to construct their speaking and listening levels. And also, right at the start of the project, she was great in that she suggested I go find their English teacher and find their speaking and listening level that they were currently at in English, and then we could look and see if they made progress throughout the work that we did in DT as well.
One of the key ways in which students' progress was assessed was their self-assessment of their confidence in delivering the project. What advice would you give to D&T teachers to help them prepare for the assessment?
I think it's in the practice, definitely. Confidence can come definitely over time, and the more they get used to standing in front of an audience and having to deliver something, or just being listened to by somebody in a group discussion, then the more normal and less uncomfortable it becomes for them. I think practice is key. You can't just throw them in there. I don't know what you think from...
No, I think you're right. What we found was, like I said, every lesson kind of built on things. So right at the very start, they were really, really reluctant. Some of them, obviously, there were some more chatty kids in there who were quite happy to get up and do it straight away, which then the others could see that. And then as the time went on, doing the little starters, little bits at the end of the lesson, all built up till at the end, everybody was put at the front, everybody wanted to take part, and everybody wanted to show this wonderful idea to the client and express what they thought about it, because they were all so keen to get involved in competitiveness between the two groups, because they were in the same class. It was great to see.
Yes. So. Okay, so thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. That's been really helpful, and thank you for inviting us into school today to talk about this. You can find resources helping in the delivery of the project on the D&T Association website. That's at www.data.org.uk.